Alright, in this demo, we are going to create a shoulder dart, okay? But we also want to keep the waist dart. So I'm going to show you how to create a shoulder dart while not losing the dart, your existing dart, okay? So the first thing we need to do here is plot out where our new dart is going to be, alright? So here, I already have a waist dart. I know I want to add a shoulder dart. I'm going to add that shoulder dart to the center of the shoulder. All right, I already have a notch there. If you didn't know where if you didn't have a notch at the center of your shoulder and you weren't sure where the center of your shoulder is, you could measure between intersection of neckline and shoulder and intersection of shoulder and armhole and find the center point. Or you can just fold the two intersections together, crease your paper, and that would be your center point. Okay. So I'm going to mark here. This is where I want. So the center, and again, I already have, I'll just mark it in red right there, or green rather, okay? So that's where my dart is going to come from, okay? Where it's going to go is to apex. Remember, we always need 2 points to draw a line, all right? We need to know where it's coming from and where it's going. So this center point at shoulder is 1 point, and then apex is the other, okay? This is not a decorative dart. I mean, it could be a decorative dart, but it's also meant for fit, okay? In the front of our bodice, all darts that are meant for fit and contour point towards apex, the fullest part of our fullest part of our bust. Okay. So I have my 2 points, midpoint at shoulder and apex. So let's go ahead and connect those 2 points, and I'll draw that with a line. Right. So there's my plot line. That's where my new dart is going to open up. Okay. Now we can't just create that dart out of nothing. It has to come from somewhere, and where it's going to come from is this waist dart. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this working pattern aside for a minute and get our paper ready, where we're going to actually trace on or create our pattern. So the first thing I need on my on my paper here is a placement line, and this is where center front will line up with. Center front of my working pattern will line up with this placement line. So we always want to create or transfer patterns based on a line that you've drawn, because we want to know it's perfect. There's my placement line. Okay. Next thing I want is a line coming off my placement line. This will be my balance line, and it's going to be coming off my line at a 90-degree angle. Okay, we're going to square off. What this line is going to line up with is my bust line. Now notice the bust line on this curves, all right? And just so I make sure I have it perfect, I'm going to mark this balance line using center front here, where the bust line lines up, and my apex. I'm going to transfer those 2 points, okay? From center front to apex, my bust line on this is perfectly straight, and then it curves up, okay? So I'm just marking where bust line is at center front and where it is at apex. I'm going to transfer that through. And let's see if it came through. It did right there. Okay. So now I should be able to square off of my placement line and line up my ruler with those 2 points. Yes, and it is creating a squared line, so that's what we like. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a line at a 90-degree angle off of my placement line. I'm going to draw this nice and long, because this is what we're going to line up our neckline and armhole intersection with, as you can see. Okay. So now I have my placement line, and I have what I'm calling my balance line. All right. Now we'll go back to our working pattern, and what we're going to do is we need to close this dart, but not all the way. We're going to close it. And when we close it, a new dart will start opening up here at shoulder. All right. I'm going to put a little bit of tape right at apex, because that's going to be my hinge point. All right. So what I'm going to do is slash up one of my dart legs. It doesn't matter which dart leg you use. Just make sure it's not the center line. Okay. I'm going to go up a dart leg to the tip of the dart. And when I get to the tip of the dart, I'm going to follow that right up to apex. But I'm not going to cut through apex. I'm just going to go up to it, but not through it. All right, so there we go. Now I'm going to slash from my shoulder down this plot line to apex. Okay, so this is where the new dart is going to open up, or my second dart. And I'm going to slash all the way to apex, but not through apex. Now that creates a hinge point for me at apex, meaning that I can close or move. See how I'm closing this dart down here, and it hinges right there at apex. Okay, so, and as I close this, a new dart is opening up at shoulder. Now again, we still want to keep our waistline, our waist dart. Okay, we want to have more contour in this and more fit, so we're taking from this dart and we're putting here, and then we'll have two darts, okay, for that added contour. So before we close that dart, let's go ahead and line up our center front with our placement line, and I'm also going to line up my bust line here at center front with that balance line that I drew. So right there looks good. Make sure it's looking good here. Make sure apex is on that line. It looks like it is. Okay, I'm going to tape this down at center front to hold it in place. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start closing my waist dart. All right, I'll start closing that until the intersection, this point right here, intersection of side seam and armhole, touches that balance line. Okay, so let's close this dart and keep going, and there we go. Now it's touching that balance line right there, that intersection. Okay, and that's where I'm going to tape this closed, like so. Okay, now the reason I didn't have to open it up this much, I could have done less, but the reason I did this is because now I have a straight bust line, giving me perfect balance here on my bust. Okay, all right, so now we're ready to trace off. I'm going to go ahead and start tracing off. I'll start here at waist and center front, and I'll just draw down here my waist. A little bit of my dart seam allowance is in the way. That's not a big deal. All right, now here, this line that I slashed, this is a dart leg, and then here's my other dart leg. I want to make sure I mark those, okay? If the dart seam allowance is in the way, like it is here, I can just simply come in here, kind of cut it out a little bit. There we go, now it's not blocking me so much. Okay, so I'll continue tracing. And I've gotten to that first dart leg. I'm just going to mark up 1/4 of an inch to mark that first dart leg. Skip over the gap. And then I'm going to come and mark the other dart leg right there. And continue tracing. Okay. Now I'm at side seam. I'll come up to my side seam. And up armhole. Make sure you transfer any notches you have. And up shoulder now. Okay, I'm at my first dart leg from the shoulder dart. I'm just going to mark down 1/4 of an inch, and that's it. Skip over the gap and mark 1/4 inch down this dart leg, and then continue shoulder. And remember, do not mark the dart legs all the way to apex. Just mark that first 1/4 of an inch. Okay. Come down neckline. Whoops. There we go. I'm back at center front. One more thing I want to transfer, and that's my apex. Make sure that's transferred on there. There we go. Now I can go ahead and remove my working pattern. There we go. All right, so I'll mark, here's apex right here. I'll mark it in green. There's apex, where those two green lines intersect. And now we can start perfecting our trace off, our pattern, okay? I'm going to square out for 1/2 inch at waist, and for about 1/2 inch at neckline. That way I don't end up with points there. And we'll perfect neckline with a ruler. Shoulder I'm going to skip over before I true because I want to establish the start. Let's go to armhole. And draw that in. We have a notch here at armhole. Let's go ahead and draw that in. Okay, here at side seam, drawing a line, or perfect that. And then I'm not going to do waist quite yet because I have a draw and a dart there. Okay, so let's start establishing these darts and then we can perfect. Okay, so I know where my two darts are going to be here at waist and here at shoulder. First thing I need to do is draw on my center fold line of my dart. The center fold line needs 2 points, all right, to actually create the line. So I know what one point will be. That will be apex. The other point will be right between my two dart legs. Okay, so I'm going to fold over this dart leg to that dart leg, and that should give me my center point. Or you can measure the distance between the two. There we go. So that crease right there is the exact center. I can go ahead and mark it. All right. And now I'll go ahead and connect that to apex. All right. Now I want to find the tip of my dart. I don't want my tip of my dart to be right at apex. Otherwise it's going to end up looking like a cone. So we are going to go ahead and measure down from apex 5/8 of an inch. Mark right on our center fold line. That's the tip of our dart. Now we can connect that dart tip to our dart legs at the waist. There we go. Let's go ahead and fold this dart out so we can then true our waist. Okay, and then also get the dart intake. First thing, now this is a dart, a vertical dart. That means the seam allowance of the dart is going to get folded towards center front. All right, this is our center front right here. So first thing I'm going to do is fold under at the dart tip. That way when I crease my dart leg, that crease won't continue up past that dart tip. Now I'm going to crease the dart leg that's closest to center front, which is this one. There we go. And I'm going to close it by bringing it to the other dart leg. And let's open that up. And you can see it's adding contour to where I need it, and it's taking fullness out where I don't need it. All right. Now I can go ahead and perfect my waist. Right now my waist is not lining up perfectly where when that dart is closed, which is fine. But what I need to do is connect intersection of side seam and waist to this 1/2 inch mark I made here. So let's connect those 2 points. There we go. And we'll connect them like so. And now you will probably be able to see the shadow of the seam allowance of my dart folded under, and it's folded towards center. I'm now going to trace over the waist where that's folded under. There we are. And open that up. There it is. I can now perfect my perforations there with a ruler. And here as well. There we go. So there's our waist dart, all perfected. Let's go ahead and do our shoulder dart. Same thing here. We need to find the center between our two dart legs. You can measure the distance between the two, or just fold over, dart leg to dart leg. Crease your paper right there. Open it up. That crease is the center point between the two dart legs. I can now connect that point to apex, creating a line, which will be the center fold line of my dart. There we go. And I need to find my dart tip. I don't want it going all the way to apex, so I'm going to measure back from apex on that center fold line I just established, 5/8 of an inch. And now I can connect dart tip to my dart legs, creating my dart. This one. And here is the second one. All right, there we go. All right, now I just need to fold out this dart, and then I can perfect my shoulder and find out what my dart intake is going to be. All right, so again, I'm going to go ahead, and this is a vertical dart. It's in the front, so it's going to fold towards center front. The seam allowance of it will. Let's fold under right at dart tip. And let's crease the dart leg closest to center. That's this one. And close that dart. And dart leg to dart leg. Open this up. It's creating contour. It's taking fullness out of shoulder and adding it to bust. That's great. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and perfect our shoulder. And we want to connect intersection of armhole and shoulder to intersection of neckline and shoulder. So let's go ahead and draw a line in connecting those 2 points. There we are. I can see where my seam allowance is folded under. I'm going to go ahead and trace off or score through my new shoulder line where that seam allowance of the dart is folded underneath. There we are. Open that up, and there's the perforations creating my new dart opening. I'll go ahead and perfect those. There we go. All right. Now I can go ahead, you can go ahead and add seam allowance. All right. In this case, I'm just going to cut center front on fold, so I'll mark that. And again, for your grain line, it would be cut on length grain typically, unless you're cutting it on bias. But length grain would just be parallel to center front. So there's a grain line parallel to center front. All right. And there we've taken out of one dart and created another, but we still have 2 darts. And there's the working pattern with it.